And welcome back to another edition of the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV as we have another great week in front of us for the high school football landscape here in Riverside. And as always, I'm going to bring on my co-host, my man in the booth. He is the great Ghazal Hassan. How are you today, my friend?
So are we going to finish that fourth quarter, Jeff? From Friday, or is that just done?
No, that is like a lost episode. That's one of those things you never want to see again, and you throw it away. Never want to see it again.
A lot of questions, but no answers. But at least, hey, great play by Adrian Mendoza, which won the game for his team.
Well, I will say this, when I walk around my school or I'm walking around town, everybody was talking about this La Sierra game. And they said the kid that caught the pass or the interception and went 98 yards, everybody said they enjoyed seeing a grown man with a beard pointing at everybody as he's running down the field and scoring. But
he's been great. Like, we've watched him a couple of times over the years, and he's made some great plays on Riverside TV. He's just one of those big game hunters, right? When the game is big, when the game's on Riverside TV, Adrian Mendoza always comes up with some big plays. Well, Arlington, by the way, 2-0 on Riverside TV this year.
And think of it this way: they could be 2-0 going into after this Friday. That's a great. Coach Argamosa's done a great job over there.
Yeah, he's fun. He's fun to talk to. And always, gives us a little more than we need. And he's an old player and kind of new to Riverside. He's a Montebello guy, but I think he fits right in. And it's good to see the Lions having some success this year. They're 4-2. A couple of years ago, they had that run late in the season, but now it gets to the nitty gritty. League play, week 2, nitty gritty for a lot of these teams.
Well, that might have been the absolute worst football game in the history of high school football, but we also had another one. It was Orange Vista and North, and wow, how did Orange Vista, they really took North by storm, didn't they?
Just like the Coyotes in your backyard, the Coyotes over there on 3rd and Chicago was homecoming for North, and they kind of ruined homecoming a little bit. But Huskies will be back. Opie Vaipulu's back there in the lab trying to figure some things out, and they can always rely on Cameron Shen, and they're really talented quarterback. I hope he's okay. I think he pulled up with a little bit of a pull in that game on Friday night. Hopefully he's ready to play this week.
I still think that John W. North is going to make a playoffs and shock some people. They've, the record doesn't indicate how good they can actually be. Very athletic, very well coached, and hopefully North can turn it around. But before we get into anything else, let's talk about the games we have on the docket this week. First, let's talk about our game, Santiago versus King. What are your thoughts on that game?
Back in the land of the Big West, it'll be really interesting. I know King, it was a tough one. And you and I talked about this. Went for 2, went for the win. I'm never going to fault the coach for going for the win. They didn't get it. Great Oak beat him. And, I'm looking at Santiago. Do you know, we talked about this with Murrieta Mesa. So Santiago's 0-6, okay? And I know people look at that, they're 0-6. But they got the cagey one, the wily one. Bert Esposito's their head coach. He's kind of like the Lou Holtz, Dennis Erickson of high school football. I think he's been at 6 or 7 different places, But the teams in the non-league schedule, so they lost to Murrieta Mesa last week. And we had talked about Murrieta Mesa, that the teams that Murrieta Mesa played in the non-league schedule were 21-5 combined. So Murrieta Mesa's 0-5, but the teams they played were really, really good. They played a couple undefeated teams, Beaumont among them. But then also look at Santiago. The teams they have played, I think they played Yucktown to open it up. Yucaipa, I believe their non-league opponents, 24-7. That's a 77.5% winning percentage. So it'll be interesting because don't sleep on the Sharks. Your buddy Bert Esposito is their coach, and he's done a great job wherever he's been. But also, they're probably better than what their record indicates simply based on the teams they have played.
I agree 100%. Let's talk about the juicy game of the week, and that is over at Ramona. We're going to have Hillcrest and Ramona. Who would have thought that one of these teams could go start 0-2 in the River Valley League, and from a defending champion, they could go 0-2. Let's start with Ramona first.
And we've talked about it, Jeff. 27 seniors graduate. No Bo Bruins, no Nathan Johnson, but cupboard far from bare. They're always feisty. They always fight. They kind of take the personality of their head coach. And it's interesting because obviously it's the whole pupil mentor thing, right? Is that Travis Carter, the head coach at Hillcrest, played for Coach Mush. We beating that into the ground. But it's always an intriguing chess match. And I know, Hillcrest has played in some really hard luck this year, Jeff. They've lost some very close games. They've lost some games late in the year. We did their game against Grand Terrace where it was a rally from behind. So one of two things happens, right? You play in hard luck all year, or eventually it turns. So the idea for Hillcrest against Ramona, you keep it close. You keep it close, fourth quarter, and somebody makes a play. They don't have their great receiver, Julian Sandoval. Hopefully they'll get him back sometime down the road. But again, yeah, you're right. It's a pivotal game. You don't want to go 0-2. Nobody wants to go 0-2 in league. And Ramona's at home, a little bit of an advantage for them. But I know that it's almost like it's not a rivalry game, but it almost is because of the relationship between the coaches. Rivalry games, you can kind of throw the records out the window.
Well, Coach, I should say, Gasol, we had another great one on Saturday. New stadium over in the Menifee, Mount San Jacinto College has a new stadium, and they played against our favorite team, the Tigers of Riverside. How good is this Tigers team?
New stadium, who dis? I mean, how scary is Tom Kraft now that he can run the football? It's like, remember in Die Hard when he gets the guy on the chair in the Santa suit. Now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho. Well, now Tom Kraft's got a running game, a prolific running game, where all of a sudden we know how they fill the air with footballs. They how many different receivers they throw to. So Jordan Barton takes a little bit of a step back, and you give credit to Mount San Jacinto. They did a great job kind of on the passing game. Then all of a sudden the running game explodes. You got Bryce Strong, you got Boncola, you got to cast 1,000 those big boys up front on the offensive line. So it just shows kind of the balance and versatility. But you and I were talking, and I read Dennis Pope's piece. They won 41-17 on the road. They'd given up a bunch of points on the road, which I knew they were looking at. But Tom Kraft still wasn't happy, even though they're undefeated and they won 41-7. So we'll see what happens the next time out for them.
And we got to talk about the defensive stopper. Mr. Bogar had 3.5 sacks in that game. He is on pace to break all kinds of records.
I know you've made a promise to Eisenhower about cutting off your pinky. You got to make a promise to Isaiah Bogart. He's got to, at some point, give him an incentive. If he reaches a certain incentive, you'll have him over for pancakes.
Well, I hope I can afford to feed him. That's a big fella right there.
Yeah, and he's been playing really, really well. And, it's something James Cook always figures out how to put guys in positions to succeed. They've sent so many guys up to the next level. And we talk about it all the time. Obviously, the attention's on the offense for RCC because it's so prolific. But the defense, the last 4 or 5 years that you and I have been watching them, has kind of ascended. They've really developed and ascended every single year, kind of a better place.
I agree 100%. So the Tigers, they're going to be back on the TV bandwidth with us here at Riverside TV, I think in 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah, I think it's the 14th against Grossmont, league game. So it's like weird. It's a really interesting breakdown. Their last 3 games that we're going to do: October 14th against Grossmont, October 28th against Saddleback, and then the finale that could be for the league title because Fullerton's playing really well right now. November 11th at Wheelock Stadium. I think it's a 66th all-time matchup between Fullerton and RCC.
Well, we will have it, and he will be on the call with myself for all of these Riverside games. Gasol, as always, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you Friday night and then Friday night at the pep rally.
It'll be fun. I will see you on Friday night. Always have a great time at the pep rally, which was the Jeff rally this week. But I'm glad Pep's back. I'm glad everything's back to normal. So you need that chaos every once in a while, but you guys, you and Pep, you did a great job. Just a great combination, all the highlights, and now we're really into league play. So now you guys are becoming an information center. You are essential workers now in the world of high school football.
Well, I've never been called essential at anything, but thank you, Gasol, and we will see you Friday night. And thanks for joining us. When we come back, we're going to have the coaches from Friday night's games here on the Coach's Perspective. And welcome back to the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV, as we're now joined by the head coach of Martin Luther King. He is the great Jason McMains. How you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'll tell you what, though, you guys took a tough one on Saturday night. We were not able to, get those highlights. But tell us exactly what happened. You lost by 1 on the last second, going for 2. Is that exact what happened at Great Oak?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Proud of the way we fought and had our backs against the wall a couple times. Made some costly mistakes. Missed field goal and threw a pick in the end zone early in the game that proved costly. With all that being said, we were down by 7 with about a minute and. I'd say about a minute and 45 left, and I thought the kids did very well in our 2-minute. They got in a good rhythm, got it all the way down, scored on the very last play. And the decision was made. Had a lot of players wanting to go for 2. I felt good about. A play that we had, and we just we didn't execute it as good as we should at that point. So, it's on me. I'll take it. But the kids fought hard. They gave everything they got. In that game, it was a tough one. But give it to Great Oak. They played great as well. I'm extremely proud of our players and our boys. And it's a tough call you make that. You get it, and it's the greatest call in the world, and you don't, then it's the worst call in the world, and that's part of our, game, and it is what it is. So we just got to move on, turn the page, and we got a tough team ahead of us in Santiago, and Coach Burt does a great job, over there. I just have so much respect for him and his staff, and so we better step it up this week.
Talking about Bert Esposito, a great guy, was a coach at Ramona years ago and a dear friend of ours. What are your thoughts on him taking over this Santiago team? They're going to be pretty formidable in the near future, don't you think?
Oh, it's dangerous, with what and the resources he's got over at Santiago and what he's just capable of doing. I have so much respect for Coach Esposito and my days with the NFF, that's kind of how I first met him. And, it's just, been around him. And like I said, just me being a younger guy and seeing what he's done, I got nothing but, respect for him and what he's been able to do wherever he's at, and, Coach Espo is going to have that thing rolling in no time.
Well, Coach, I'll tell you what, this King team, you guys have been very, very up and down, but very talented, to say the least. I think it's one of the better teams in the city of Riverside. I look at Norte Vista and I look at King. You guys are about the same kind of team. You're both, you can run the football, but you guys can throw the football a bit, and you have some new guys that have kind of come into the fold the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it starts with our quarterback, Josh Harper. He's a 3-year guy, and he's done such a great job for us, within our system. And he just kind of waited his time, and, he's taken full advantage of it. Like I said earlier, kind of, establishing a run game and that being a big focus for us, back in spring, the summer, and even fall camp, and I still think we're not there yet. We have a couple running backs that are still kind of banged up here and there, but I think Noah Villarreal has done an excellent job for us. Sam Green has brought in, a definite physical presence at that tight end H-back for us. That's really helped us, in the run game and play action and in the passing game. And, we have great receivers in Derek Kahn and Alex Juarez and, Riker Galvin have done just, JJ Cruz have just been, nothing but great for us early on. And, then to add Blake back, we knew we were going to take a little bit of a hit early on with him not being there. But, now that we got him, he's a special kid, and we try to find ways to utilize him as much as we can.
Well, Coach, you're looking at this Santiago team. What do they do that kind of concerns you?
It's Santiago, man, and we haven't had very much success against Santiago. So, we have a very tough task ahead of us. The defensive coordinator I know real well, and the amount of pressure and different looks that he gives keeps me up. Definitely is going to keep me up all week. trying to handle the amount of pressure that they bring, and offensively, I know their quarterback has been great for them this year. He's done a lot of good things, and so they got just good weapons, and we got to match up with them, and we got to play our best game. Like you said, we've been kind of up and down, and we've all throughout the season have been able to respond, when things have kind of gone not so good our way. So hopefully, well, we got a tough task. We got to bounce back. We have to have a great week of practice to get ready for these guys.
Well, Coach, as always, thank you for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you guys Friday night as Gonzalez-san and I will have the call on Riverside TV. And best of luck this week, and we'll see you on Friday night.
All right. See you, man.
All right. He is the coach, the great Jason McMains of Martin Luther King High School. And we'll be right back with his counterpart over at Santiago, the great Bert Esposito, here on the Coach's Perspective on Riverside TV. And we're back here on the Coach's Perspective with the head coach of Santiago. He's the great Bert Esposito. How you doing today, Coach?
Good, heading on into practice.
Now, Coach, you and I go back, I want to say 30 dang years.
Pretty close to 30.
Well, Coach, it's great to see you again in Riverside. We're going to have your game against Martin Luther King. But you are at Santiago. You are the king of the rebuilds. You did it at Paloma Valley. You did it at Temecula Valley. And now you're doing it again. I can't believe you're doing it for a third time over at Santiago. What are your initial impressions of your first year at the helm?
Well, it's been a learning experience for me. We are struggling, obviously. We haven't won a game, but the last two games, we were down 21-10 at halftime to Roosevelt, and then with our last game, which already had put it behind me, I can't remember who it was. No, with Mesa. Mesa, I felt like going in, Mesa and Great Oak were probably two of the best teams going in, and I still feel that way. Mesa only lost to Marietta by 4. They lost to Valencia by 6. I mean, those are no joke programs. And so going in, I was like, okay, let's see if we are really improving or not. And we were actually up 7-0 at the end of the first, and we were up 14-0. And then, we fell behind 20 to 14 at half. And, we made a game of it. And that was a great experience for our kids. So, but, Mason does a great job. Coach Oscar over there, man, he's a phenomenal person. And so, it was, again, more of a learning experience for us. And that's what we're doing. We're learning how to play football, and I'm enjoying the ride.
Well, Coach, I was talking to head coach Jason McMains. He said he's a little concerned about your quarterback. And then you mentioned something to me just in passing. You have a running back that's never played before. Is that correct?
One of my running backs has never played before, and the other two have never really ran the ball on a varsity team. They're both young guys, and we have a lot of kids. I think we only had like 3 linemen that had any significant varsity time, and 2 other defensive players. That's it. The rest of them had never seen the varsity field coming into the season. So we got a lot of rebuilding to do, but you know what? We're on our way. And, I've been at this for a while, so I kind of know and knew what to expect. And you just got to keep these kids focused and, excited. And they still are. They still come to practice every day. And they buy in and they do what they need to do. We just need to get better.
Well, Coach, I know you've built players from, basically kids that have never played football. You did it at Paloma. You did it at Temecula Valley. But how important is the off season for you? Because you do more than I think any coach in the Inland Empire as far as off season workouts. I mean, how much does that? How much do you benefit from that?
I came in February and was trying to blend the previous kids with the new kids. You don't want to come in like gangbusters. A bunch of the kids will quit. They've never seen anything like me coming in, I can be pretty intense. And so I've had to really kind of, this first off season, as it is with all the rebuilds I've done, is kind of, walking on eggshells. But the second off season is where the hammer comes down. And I've been warning these kids, let's get through this season, do as best we can with what we got. But starting in December, once the season's over, the off season is everything.
Okay, Coach, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you this question here. You've been at this. How many years have you been coaching, first of all?
Coaching totally, it's been 41. But as a varsity head coach, it's been 32 years.
Now, in those 32 years, what kind of coach are you now that you were? What's the difference between 32-year first-year head coach to year 32? Has your philosophy changed very much in that time period?
My philosophy of football is pretty much the same. My philosophy as a human being has definitely changed. I'm kind of like that grandpa who I love to see my little grandkids, not so much like the dad who, early in your career when your kids are coming up, they pretty much hate your guts. They think you don't know anything. And, so dad is just a hard nose and this and that. I'm a little bit more like grandpa now. So a little more patient at times. Some people argue that, but yeah, definitely a little more patient. And I'm not as concerned as just the scoreboard like I used to be. I've really come to learn that coaching is about the people and, take care of the fundamentals and all that, and the wins will come. Let's not focus on are we winning or losing during the game. Let's focus on our job. Let's focus on, just being good people, and the rest will take care of itself. And that's been the biggest change for me.
Well, Coach, like I said, I think I've known you for those 32 years, and I'm going to say this: I think you've always been one of the kinder coaches I've known, and one of the more humorous coaches. Just a overall great guy, and I cannot wish you I want you to have the best success in the world at Santiago, because I'm a dear friend of yours, and I always want to see you do well, Coach.
I appreciate it, man. The feeling is back. I mean, I love hearing you around, being around you. You're just that kind of person. And, when you got sick a little while ago, I was really worried, man. I was really worried, but you're looking great, and I'm so excited for just having you around. You're a wonderful human being.
Well, Coach, it is always great to see you, and we look forward to seeing you Friday night as Ghazal Hassan and I have the call. I'll get there early. We'll hang out and talk a little bit.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, he is the great Bert Esposito, the man in charge over at Santiago High School. And when we come back, we'll have the man from Ramona, Ken Mashinsky, on the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV. And welcome back to the Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV, as we are now joined by, everyone knows, this guy's my favorite coach. He coaches my favorite team. It's the favorite school in Riverside. He's the great Ken Mashinsky. How are you today, Coach?
Hey, Jeff, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on the show again today.
Well, Coach, you guys are playing. It's like a master and a Padawan. You are like a Jedi master, and you're going against your former quarterback and former player, the great Travis Carter. How's that feel?
Yeah, every year when Travis and I play, it's really exciting. Travis and I talk every week, and we didn't talk this weekend. I think that we had kind of a tough loss on Friday, and he was probably didn't want to upset the Bear. But we talked this afternoon, and we're both really ready to go. And they're a very good team. It's going to be a great game. It's a pink out game for us. It's a home game for us. So I'm real excited to have Hillcrest and Travis to come over to Ramona and play.
Now, this team, you guys suffered a tough loss to Patriot this week, but you kind of expected this going into the season, some growing pains. 28 guys gone, 18 starters off of last year's team, but you kind of have to be happy with the way they've played at times, right?
It was a tough loss. Patriot is a very good team. They always play us very tough. hold on to the light.
It's Halloween, Coach. It's Halloween.
Sorry. Automatic.
I love it.
So they always play us tough, and they have a great 1-2 punch with their quarterback and their running back, and then they added Marquette Moore as a receiver. So their offense, I think that Patriot and Coach Fowler threw the ball more on Friday night than he's thrown against us in the last 5 years. But it was a great game. It was again, a tough loss, but a tough loss against a good Patriot team. And now we're going up against Hillcrest, and it's going to be another challenge for our kids. And they know it, and we are going to practice our hearts out this week and hopefully play a great game on Friday night.
Yeah, who would have thought that, you're coming into Friday night's game that both you and Hillcrest both suffer losses. One of you are going to be 0-2, and that's for me as friends of both you guys. I feel for one of you.
Yeah. Hillcrest played a really talented Norte Vista team. I went to that game, and Norte Vista has some weapons offensively and defensively. But Hillcrest moved the ball really well against them, especially in the first half. They just had a couple miscues, just kind of like we had against Patriot. Something happened this play, and Patriot capitalized. Something happened to Hillcrest, and Norte Vista capitalized. So that's why I think that this Friday night, Hillcrest Ramona, it's going to be a pretty special game.
Yeah, and how good is their little running back Ventus? He reminds me of some of the running backs you've had in the past. The little bitty guys that are great. Once they get hit, they get yards. What do they call it? The yak, yards after contact.
When we went on Friday night and saw them, or on Thursday night and saw them play against Novi, I didn't really know too much about Hillcrest, and out comes their quarterback, and then number 21, their running back, and he is just flying down the field, and we all kind of looked at each other like, oh boy, we're in for it. So Patriot also had a good 1-2 punch. Hillcrest has a great 1-2 punch. So we're facing very similar teams offensively and defensively. They run some similar stuff. So hopefully Patriot prepared us a little bit for Hillcrest. I think the speed of Hillcrest is a little bit more. But again, I think it's going to be a great game Friday night.
Well, you have a couple great players at the quarterback spot, and then at the receiver spot, you have Acosta and Valenzuela. But how important how much have you seen Sincere Tolbert this year grow as a player?
Immensely. Sincere got the starting job. He earned the starting job, and he has really blossomed. He's just improved every game, every practice. He's such a humble young man, and his name is Sincere for a reason. He's just a great young man, and it's awesome to coach him. He's a player's a coach's dream because he does whatever he asks him to. So hopefully, he just keeps improving week in, week out, and, we can keep feeding him the ball.
Coach, you don't need to move. I like you in the dark. In fact, you're much better looking in the dark.
Close to Halloween. I knew that was going to happen, too.
Well, Coach, I will say this. Your shirt glowed of Ramona when the lights went out.
I was actually looking at myself on the screen, and I was like, oh, this isn't too bad. I'll stay here, but it's a little freaky for the viewers at home.
Yeah, it's like you're sitting in a closet with a flashlight on your face.
That's exactly what it is.
Well, Coach, I'm not going to take up any more of your time because I know you're in practice right now. You got to run out. But thank you as always for joining us, and can't wait to see you guys in the River Valley League game against your old foe and old player, Travis Carter and Hillcrest. But thanks for joining us as always, and I love you, Coach. And Ramona High School, go Rams! Is that what they do? Horns up?
Man.
Is that what it is? Is it go like that? Yeah, horns up, baby! Ramona High School. He's Ken Mashinsky. He's the great coach of Ramona, and we'll be right back here on Riverside TV with more hijinks and coaches here on The Coach's Perspective. And welcome back to The Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV, as we are now joined by my best friend in the entire world. He's the host of the Friday Night Pep Rally. He is Pep Fernandez. How are you doing today, Pep?
Man, I can't believe it. We have the host of the Friday Night Pep Rally and the host of the Friday Night Jeff Rally all on the same show together. This is amazing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you're going to be back this Friday for the Pep Rally. Sorry for your loss, but I'm glad to have you back in order and in studio.
You know, Jeff, we did when the Inland Sports Show was a radio show. We did that show from anywhere and everywhere, and I don't think I've ever actually done a show from the gym of a hotel. So that was the first this past Friday night on the pep rally. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I mean, let's think of all the places. We were in Valparaiso, Indiana. We did a game. We did games up in Oregon State. We were all over the place. I mean, you name it, we did. We did it from the grass in the quad at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. That was fun just because there were a lot of good-looking co-eds there.
The Ontario Airport, remember we did it from
right.
the airport, like all kinds of places. So yeah, that was a new one for me though.
Well, Pep, we're glad to have you back, but let's talk about the games this Friday night. We know we already have the two on Riverside TV, but let's talk about those other juicy games in the area.
Yeah, I mean, the big one for me is going to be Citrus Valley taking on Beaumont. Beaumont is 6-0. They've looked really good. They're scoring a lot of points. Chris Cooper is one of the best quarterbacks in the Inland Empire. But they probably haven't played a team like Citrus Valley. Citrus Valley, you look at their record, they're 3-3 overall, but they've played some really good teams in non-league play. And we've said this time and time before that sometimes the record isn't really indicative of how good a team really is. Citrus Valley is definitely that case, that they're a lot better than what their record shows. So Beaumont is 6-0 and Citrus Valley's 3-3, but the Blackhawks, they might have been the better team all along, but we're going to find out. We're going to get them on the field together this Friday night. That's a huge game in the Citrus Belt League.
Now, how good has the Citrus Belt been preseason? You think about it, Cajon's been dominant. Yucaipa was very good, until they took their first loss. But how good is the Citrus Belt this year?
Well, what's crazy is you would say, and most people would say, the two best teams in the CBL, Cajon and Citrus Valley, they didn't even have the best records. It was Beaumont and Yucaipa, both 5-0 going into that head-on collision this past week. So the two best teams, Cajon and Citrus Valley, they had tough non-league schedules. So Cajon's 4-2, Citrus Valley's 3-3, but Beaumont 6-0, Yucaipa's 5-1. What's unfortunate, Jeff, is when all the dust settles, probably one of those teams is not going to make the playoffs, unless you get like an at-large bid at the end of the season. But that's how good and competitive the CBL is. And I should say this too, Redlands East Valley is much improved. I know they got blanked by Cajon this past week, but Rev is much improved. And Redlands, we saw Redlands pick up an overtime win against Hillcrest a couple of weeks ago. So the Terriers, they're at least trending in the right direction. So the CBL, I think, is tougher than ever.
Well, we go from the CBL, let's go to the Riverside. Martin Luther King suffered a tough loss at Great Oak, lost by one. Coach McMains went for two, trying to get the victory. But we have some big games this week from some of these other Riverside teams.
Yeah, and speaking of King, I mean, that was a tough loss because when you look back at last year, Great Oak and Murrieta Mesa, they tied for that Big West League championship, and King was in third. I think Temecula Valley was in fourth. So every single game in that league is important. So that was a very tough loss for King. I know Coach McMains would have loved to pick up that victory. Just didn't happen. But when you look at the River Valley League, Jeff, I love the RVL, man. It is wide open. We know how good Ramona was last year. Norta Vista was the favorite going into this year. And maybe we're not talking about Patriot enough, but Patriot's going to play Arlington. So we're going to find out a lot about the Warriors this coming week as Arlington and Patriot go head-to-head. And a game that has a lot of importance in that River Valley League championship race, or even in the long run, a playoff spot, a playoff position.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun to watch it all iron out. Can you imagine? Think of this way. Ramona or Hillcrest will be 0-2 to start the River Valley League. That's, mind-blowing right there.
Yeah, that's crazy. And on the flip side, and we were just talking about Arlington and Patriot, one of those teams will be 2-0 after this week. So one of those teams will have the inside track on that big-time battle with Norta Vista down the road that could ultimately decide the league champion, or, maybe runner-up or a playoff spot, one of those things. So, yeah, Arlington or Patriot, one of those teams will be 2-0 after this week.
All right, and before we let you go, let's talk about North a little bit. North has kind of been up and down. They struggled last week against Orange Vista. Do you think they can bounce back and maybe still get in the playoffs?
I do. A lot of teams struggle against Orange Vista. Orange Vista should have beat Vista Murrieta. They battled Cajon. Orange Vista is very, very good. They're the defending Ivy League champions. They'll probably win the Ivy League again. But when you look at second and third place in the Ivy League for a playoff spot, Rancho Verde is certainly going to be in the mix, and JW North is, right there too. Let's see, JW North is playing Rancho Verde this week, so that game, Jeff, could be a playoff spot. I know it's only week 7. We've got several more games to go in the regular season. But ultimately, that could be a playoff spot, because when you look at the rest of the league, I feel like North and Rancho Verde are probably the second and third best teams. But that's why they get on the field and play, and we're going to find out this Friday. But if North can get a win against Rancho Verde, or at least a good showing, you would still feel like they're the third best team in the Ivy League, at least.
Well, Pep, you have this show on Wednesday. Who's going to be on the show this week on the Inland Sports Show?
Oh, man. So we're going to talk a lot of high school football. We've got the Citrus Valley Blackhawks coming on to break down that big battle against Beaumont. And we've got a couple surprises as well. So 6:05 live and amplified on Wednesday night. You'll have to check it out for yourself, Jeff.
And you will be back Friday night for the Friday Night Pep Rally.
In studio, not in some dark, shadowy gym somewhere in Northern California. No, I will be back.
All right, well, he is the great Pep Fernandez, and that'll do it for another edition of The Coach's Perspective here on Riverside TV. We will see you Friday night at the game.